How often do you ask yourself, when exactly is that time of the month? At Hagan Realty, we pay very close attention to monthly cycles for our clients. No. Monthly sales cycles. And that time of the month, that's the best time to buy or sell a house. Oh boy. Let's get moving.
I'm Jed Williams, Principal Broker for Hagan Realty, and welcome to the second episode in my series on timing the real estate market. Here, we're going to discuss how you should factor the calendar into your decision on when to list your home for sale or when to make an offer on your next one. We'll start by looking at what other DC metro area buyers and sellers are doing. Here we see a breakdown of listings in blue and contracts in orange by day of the month, averaged out across the year. And it's generally pretty even, especially for contract activity. You can ignore the drop here on the 31st. There's only 7 months of the year that have a 31st day, so you'd naturally expect it to be slightly lower. For listings, there is a noticeable difference between the beginning of the month and the end of the month. In fact, there are 29% more new listings in the first 7 days of the month than there are in the last 7. Even when you account for the 31st, there's still a 24% difference. Why? That's a good question with a rather silly answer. This one gets chalked up to over-eager realtors. When a seller says, "I think I'd like to list it sometime in May," well, come the break of dawn on May 1st, that agent is falling all over themselves trying to get that sign in the ground. Okay, so maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, and we should give these agents a bit of the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps there might be actually some advantage to listing at the beginning of the month. Let's see, shall we? This chart shows the 4 main metrics we use to determine listing performance. You may remember them from my prior videos. They are negotiation strength, average time on market, listing success rate, and the percentage of homes that go under contract in the first week on market. In each case, the metrics are shown for properties that listed on the specified day of the month. Quick glance, what do you think? Are you seeing any reason to list at the beginning of the month? While there is a little bit of statistical noise, ultimately, when in the month you choose to list makes no material difference on any of these metrics. None. 0. So that bump in listing activity at the start of each month really is just agents pushing for a quicker payday.
Movement prior to the snap.
False start. Offense. The entire line except the center. 5-yard penalty, still first down.
Now that's from the seller's perspective. What about from the buyers? The primary metrics that matter to a buyer are how many homes do they have to choose from, how quickly do they need to make an offer decision, and what price can they offer. When it comes to choice and inventory, as I've discussed in previous videos, on average buyers are searching for 4 months or even longer. So the inventory levels within the span of a single month, and especially on a specific day, are absolutely immaterial. As for the second variable, decision timing, in the previous chart, I showed that time on market and first week contract rate, the 2 measures that would determine how much time a buyer has to see and make an offer on a house, neither stat varies at all within a month, which just leaves the offer price. In the previous chart, I showed how negotiation strength does not vary from when in the month a property is listed. But it does change with when in the month it goes under contract. Buyers making an offer at the very end of a month have a 0.3% advantage in negotiation over offers made mid-month. 0.3% may not sound like much, but on a $500,000 purchase, that's enough to buy you
A new car!
No. Not even close. But it could get you a brand new iPhone. Now, there's no empirical data on this part, but in my opinion, this is purely a function of psychology, specifically anxiety on the part of home sellers. As the end of the month gets closer, sellers are mentally weighing what it means to be on the market going into another calendar month. And many are keenly aware of that next mortgage payment due on the 1st. Buyers think in terms of days on market, but sellers are looking at when they flip that calendar and the bills that are due on the 1st. You may notice there's a similar advantage in the first few days as well, although at a slightly reduced magnitude. In this case, I think it's still that end of the month psychology that's coming into play, but it's being dragged out by two different delays. First, negotiations can regularly take a few days to come to terms. And second, listing agents will often leave it a few days to mark a home as being under contract in the MLS. In fact, many brokerages actually teach agents to do just that as a way to bait and switch new buyer leads. You see, they leave it as active, and when a buyer calls to ask about the property, they run their scripts. I'm so sorry, that property just went under contract, but how about I help you find another one?
You're a bad man.
So now we've looked at when in the month a property lists and when it goes under contract, and now let's look at when it closes. Here is where we really start to see time of the month come to play. There are 2 times as many homes closing in the last 6 days of the month as there are in the first 6. And again, that's with only 7 months having a 31st day. And then there's that blip on the 15th. There's a very real explanation for both end of the month rush and the mid-month blip. And it's even shadier than the bait and switch tactic I described earlier. Let's start with the end of the month. Unlike the offer date, which is primarily dictated by the buyer, buyers almost always defer to their agents when selecting a closing date. And here comes one of the most common lies perpetuated in the real estate industry. Buyers' agents push clients to close at the end of the month by telling them they will save money by doing so. You see, when you close on a home purchase, your lender collects interest on that loan upfront for each day left in the month. This is called prepaid interest, and it's one of many items lumped together as closing costs. So the later in the month you close, the fewer days there are left in that month, the less prepaid interest the bank will collect. Let me show you what I mean. Here are 2 scenarios, identical in every single way except scenario 1, you close on April 30th, the last day of the month. And in scenario 2, you close exactly 1 day later, on May 1st, the first day of the month. In scenario 1, the buyer would pay exactly 1 day of prepaid interest as a closing cost. That's $38.89. In scenario 2, they would pay for the entire month, $1,166.67. So by closing at the end of the month, the buyer would save $1,127.78 on their closing costs. Saving $1,100 by closing 1 day sooner sounds like a pretty sweet deal. So why exactly am I calling these agents shady? Well, because that's not where these 2 scenarios end. That's just where the realtor gets paid. And so most of them don't care at all what happens next. But you, the buyer, you do. And let me tell you why. When you close on the last day of April, your first mortgage payment is due 32 days later on June 1st. But when you close the next day, your first mortgage payment isn't for 61 days. It's due July 1st. In this scenario, with a $500,000 house, that June 1st payment would be a little over $2,300. So buyers aren't $1,100 better off by closing at the end of the month. They're $1,200 worse off. They just won't realize that until June 1st. Now, this isn't particularly difficult math. So why do realtors keep pushing for the end of the month closings? Because many of the brokerages out there offer bonuses and awards for monthly sales numbers. So agents have an incentive to cram deals into the end of the month. So while the buyer is scrambling to make a June 1st mortgage payment that they could have skipped had they closed just 1 day later, their realtor's off sitting on some tropical beach sipping Mai Tais, posting bathing suit photos to Instagram with a laptop somewhere in the background so they can talk about how hard they're working for their clients.
You're a very bad man.
Oh, and as for that random uptick of closings on the 15th, there are several brokerages and real estate coaches out there that teach that if you get too busy to close deals at the end of the month, Then start scheduling them for the 15th, so you can treat your commissions like a semi-monthly paycheck. And that is where the mid-month blip comes from. In summary, there is no time of the month when it comes to listing your home. As a buyer, there's a slight but material benefit to making an offer towards the end of a month, but it's certainly not enough of one to risk losing out on the right house. But when it comes to scheduling closing, that absolutely does matter. And so does who you choose to be your agent. Hagan Realty is the smart choice every time. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. And if you didn't,
get out. We're here to learn. Anybody else have a problem with that?